We usually hear sounds without much thought. However, it's said that the way we perceive the same sounds can differ depending on our culture. For example, the sound of insects. In Western cultures, it's often considered just background noise, whereas in Japan, it has been used in poetry for centuries and is perceived almost like words. This might also be true for sounds like waves, rain, and the uniquely Japanese sound of slurping. The abundance of onomatopoeia in Japanese is likely deeply connected to this delicate sensitivity to sounds. This story is inspired by the Japanese perception of sounds. If you ever have the chance to visit Japan, please listen closely to the sounds you're not used to hearing. You might discover something new. Now, please enjoy this tale of mysterious sounds. Footsteps echoing in the darkness. Robert, an American, had taken a month off work and come to Tokyo for his long-awaited sightseeing trip. He had hoped to experience Tokyo like a local, but everything he saw and heard was so enjoyable that he was traveling with the boundless energy of a child. The city with no litter, clean toilets everywhere, the crowded trains with no unpleasant odors, the safe streets to walk on, the delicious and affordable food, the kind service at supermarkets, everything was wonderful. Although he hadn't studied any Japanese, he was surprised to find himself naturally saying, "Sumimasen," excuse me, sorry, many times a week into his stay. Even without fully understanding its nuances, he would bow and say, "Sumimasen," when receiving change from a convenience store clerk, or when a dish was served at a restaurant. It was a peculiar Japanese custom. Why do they say, "I'm sorry," when they haven't done anything wrong? He wondered, a smile involuntarily creeping onto his face. Had he been unknowingly absorbed into Japanese culture? The American spirit, ingrained in Robert, seemed to be transforming him into a different person. Living in this other world called Japan, Robert was definitely changing. Was this also part of his stay? He enjoyed the changing self. Robert had a daily jogging routine, but he remembered he hadn't done it since coming to Tokyo. So, he left his hotel early in the morning and started running in the opposite direction of the businessmen. Rushing to the station for work, a pleasant smell wafted through the air. He had never had breakfast outside his hotel, so he was drawn to the front of a shop by the aroma. Ramen. Robert's expression clouded slightly. He had gone to a ramen shop a few days after arriving in Tokyo, but had been annoyed by the slurping sounds of the locals eating their noodles. He had often seen on social media that while ramen was delicious, the Japanese culture of making noise while eating was incomprehensible. Would he, like naturally saying, "Sumimasen," also start slurping his ramen? This is the one thing I can't get used to. It was delicious, but eating it with those unpleasant sounds was an incomprehensible habit. That's what he thought. but he couldn't resist the hunger and the tempting smell. He decided he would just listen to music at full volume while eating. The shop's ordering system had a photo-illustrated ticket vending machine, making it easy for foreigners who didn't understand Japanese to order. There were also some foreigners inside the shop, acting like they knew their way around Japan. Zuzuzuzu. Zuzuzuzu. They're clearly foreigners, aren't they? So, being absorbed into Japanese culture makes you make such vulgar noises, he thought. Shaking his head and turning his music up to full volume. Soon after sitting down, a steaming bowl of ramen was served. Sumimasen, he said, the aroma, so enticing he wanted to bury his face in the bowl. The generous amount of garlic and chunks of fat, and the thick slices of pork that seemed like steak, melted in his mouth. The vegetables in the soup had a crisp texture and a sweet taste. He twirled the noodles around his chopsticks, and slowly brought them to his mouth. A foreigner acting like a Japan expert looked at Robert and smiled. As if to say, "This is how you eat it." He vigorously slurped his noodles. Robert shook his head with a smile. He was drenched in sweat but felt more than satisfied with the meal. With a beaming smile, he said, "Sumimasen," and left the shop. The breeze outside felt pleasant. Feeling full, he thought running would be tough, so he decided to walk a little faster. He remembered the cherry blossoms of Japan he had seen on social media. It seemed they had bloomed a little early this year, and when Robert arrived, they were just starting to fall. Which was beautiful in its own way, but he had wanted to see them in full bloom. And he walked while looking up at the cherry leaves reflecting the morning sun. He reached a bridge. Perhaps it was close to the sea, as he could see large ships in the distance and smell the salty air. Fallen cherry blossoms floated on the river, and he captured this beautiful Japanese scenery with his phone. While crossing the bridge, he suddenly needed to use the restroom. The ramen's richness must have been the cause. But this was Japan. He wouldn't want to use an American public restroom, but Japanese toilets were clean everywhere. So he felt a little relieved as he looked for one. He would have preferred a convenience store, but there didn't seem to be any around. After crossing the bridge, there was a small park. The old and small restroom there wasn't ideal, but he couldn't hold it any longer. When he entered, he found it was a Japanese-style toilet. Robert was stunned. A Japanese-style toilet? How do you use this? He knew they existed, but he thought they were only in the countryside and never imagined finding one in a cutting-edge city like Tokyo. He closed the toilet door and looked around, but there were no other toilets, only the river and the park surrounded by inorganic concrete. Should he look for another one? No, impossible. He couldn't hold it. He didn't know how to use it. But he couldn't wait any longer, so he pulled down his pants and went. He was unsure about his method, but he felt relieved that his stomachache had subsided. At that moment, He remembered a Japanese movie he had seen long ago. Back then, Japan was still perceived as an uncivilized country in the Far East. Or rather, he probably hadn't even known that a country called Japan existed. He recalled a comedy scene in an anime, where a child in a kimono was using a Japanese-style toilet. And a hand came out of the hole and touched the child's bottom. He remembered laughing out loud because it was so ridiculous. Could a hand really come out of this toilet? He wondered as he flushed. But this small space amplified Robert's anxiety. There were no such small spaces in America. Besides, this was a public restroom. It was unlikely that toilet paper would be provided. If there were any, people would probably take it. He only had his phone. His heart pounded with nervousness. He hurriedly looked back and saw toilet paper. There was even a spare roll. Typical Japanese thoughtfulness. He thought with relief, reaching for the paper to wipe himself. When suddenly, the toilet went completely dark. Even though it was still morning, not a single ray of sunlight entered. Huh? He groped for the paper. Give me a break, he muttered, feeling around in the direction where he thought the paper was. How could he not reach it in such a small space? Robert's hand searched the air. If only he had his phone, he could break through this darkness. Or so he thought. He couldn't find it in his lowered pants pocket. Robert's panic made things even more difficult. He remembered the white hand coming out of the Japanese-style toilet again. A man has to be strong, his father, a military man, used to say. His breathing became ragged. No paper. Where was it? In this pitch-black, cramped space, he couldn't reach the paper. "Dad, help me," he almost cried out. His heart was filled with anxiety and felt like it was about to break. He could hear some commotion outside the toilet. Thump. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. Thump. He wondered if someone was waiting. And if people in Japan didn't knock on doors. He couldn't find the paper. Thump, thump. Thump, thump, thump. Thump, thump. Thump. Someone was walking around the small perimeter of the toilet, making loud noises. It was a simple structure with only thin walls. He could even hear scraping sounds against the wall. Swish. Swish. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. Where is it? The paper. And I can't even get my phone out. Anger welled up along with his tension. Thump. He heard something hit the toilet. Dad, Dad. Like a child again, He called out for his father, unable to resist. Isn't Japan supposed to be a safe country? Everyone he had met in Japan had been kind. The convenience store clerks, the ramen shop staff, the hotel front desk, the cleaning staff. Everyone he encountered in Japan was smiling. Comfortable days, clean everywhere, and he could walk anywhere safely. But what was this? Now he was cowering in the pitch-black darkness of a small toilet, like a child calling for his dad. Swish, swoosh. Swish. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. Thump. Stop it. Stop it. What did I ever do to you? Then, suddenly, he felt something licking his butt. Without wiping himself, he pulled up his pants and ran back the way he had come. He didn't have the courage to check around the toilet, and he ran and ran, trembling with fear. He returned to his hotel, washed his underwear, and took a shower. It was scary, so scary. Tears welled up as he showered. When was the last time he had felt such fear? No, it was a terror he couldn't even remember experiencing before. The sensation of being licked on the butt in the pitch-black, confined space. He washed himself over and over with shampoo, but the sensation wouldn't go away. No matter how much he warmed his body, the goosebumps wouldn't subside. Robert canceled all his subsequent plans and boarded a flight back to America. No more of that terror. The plane to America took off. He was saying goodbye to Japan. The seatbelt sign went off. He took out his phone and looked at the photos he had taken in Japan. His first time in Japan. His first time in Tokyo. Shibuya's Scramble Crossing. Asakusa's Temple. Shinjuku's nightlife district. The cherry blossoms falling without reservation. The lush parks between skyscrapers. Everyone was kind, smiling, and the city was clean. He felt a slight pang of regret. Canceling his trip over something like that, as an adult. What would he tell his family? Was it childish? He even laughed at himself. While thinking of excuses, he suddenly needed to use the restroom. For a moment, that sensation flashed through his mind, but Robert smiled at his own timidity. Robert entered the airplane lavatory, locked the door, lowered his pants, and sat down on the toilet with relief. There couldn't be any shadow of animism in an airplane, a crystallization of scientific technology. Finally, he had a place where he could relieve himself in peace. It would be all right here. A safe world where everything could be explained by logic. There was nothing to be afraid of anymore. Or so it should have been. Thump. Thump, thump, thump. Huh? This is an airplane. Thump, thump. Thump. Thump, thump, thump. Thump, thump, thump. thumb. Thank you for staying with us until the end. If you enjoyed this program, please subscribe and hit the like button. It really helps us out. Also, if you've had any strange experiences or supernatural encounters during your travels in Japan, please share them in the comments section. Our excellent AI will translate, so any language is fine. This has been Haunted Hiko. See you again.